Do you also add them on with intermittent fasting, and is there an additional benefit?
We do. We do. One of the first molecules infamous molecules that we are known for is resveratrol from red wine. That molecule, discovered it in my 30s, or at least linked it to aging. What we showed was that if you give it to a fat mouse, they're as healthy as a thin mouse. They live just as long. They didn't get heart disease and all of the other bad stuff. Then what we did was interesting. We gave it to the mice either every day in their food or let them skip a meal every day so that they were fed every other day. And that combination of resveratrol plus every other day feeding, we had the longest lifespan we'd ever seen. And it was additive. Same with exercise. If we give our latest molecule called NMN to a mouse and we exercise it, it'll run even further than it could with either of those alone. So it's not an excuse to sit around and just eat chips and watch TV. It augments a healthy lifestyle, gets you further than what you could get naturally.
So are you seeing a benefit in addition? So is the idea to compound all those things together?
Exactly. Right. So you asked about myself. So I eat healthy. I try to skip meals. I also take supplements. And in fact, most of my colleagues are in the field of aging, or anti-aging as people call it. So I take NMN every morning.
What is NMN?
Good question. So let me take a quick step back.
Sure.
So about 20 years ago, Lenny Guarente and a team of us at MIT discovered a set of genes that controls aging in yeast cells, just brewer's yeast, what you find in beer and bread. And those genes are called sirtuins, and there are 7 of them in our bodies, 5 in yeast. And what they do is they protect all organisms on the planet, plants, bacteria, humans, from deterioration and disease. They're like the Pentagon. They sense when we're hungry, sense when we're exercising, and they send out the troops to defend us. So when you put more of these genes into a yeast cell or a mouse, they'll live longer, between 5 to 20% longer. And so we think that these genes are responsible for the effects of dieting and exercise, which is great. What that means is we can now mimic that with molecules. So NMN is one of those molecules, so is resveratrol. You can think of resveratrol as the accelerator pedal for the sirtuin genes, and the NMN is the fuel. And without fuel, resveratrol won't work, so NMN is the gas in the car.
I've heard of resveratrol, but is NMN a new molecule? Is this commercially available?
Some people have started selling it on the internet.
The fucking internet.
It's related to NR, which is sold by a bunch of companies.
NR?
Yeah, nicotinamide riboside is a supplement that raises the levels of a molecule called NAD.
I feel like I should make a shopping list.
So get a pen. So while you're writing that down, Joe, so the sirtuins, okay, get this. So sirtuins need NAD to work. Without them, they don't work. In fact, if you don't have NAD in your body, you'd be dead in about 30 seconds. It's a really important molecule. But as we get older, we lose NAD. So by the time you're 50, like I almost am, you have about half the levels of what you had when you were 20. So that's not good. And these sirtuins, they don't protect the body without high levels of NAD. So what NMN does, and this other molecule called NR, which both you can get on the internet, they boost the body's levels of NAD back up to youthful levels again. And if we give them to mice, these molecules to mice or even to worms or yeast, they live longer and they're super healthy.
Now, what level, like how many milligrams are you taking of these things?
NMN is something I get from myself. I'm not selling anything. So I take 1 gram of NMN in the morning. Based on clinical trials, it's been shown that will raise NAD.
With or without food?
I take a little bit of yogurt that I make myself at home just to
settle
me. I've been doing this for a while, and I only start doing stuff when I see it work in animals first. So take the yogurt, mix in some resveratrol. Resveratrol is great, but it's really insoluble. It's like brick dust. So in the yogurt, it'll dissolve. Take another 1/2 gram of resveratrol.
And how much? 1/2 gram?
Yeah. It's a powder. I have a few kilos left over from clinical trials in my basement. So yeah, that's going to last me a few decades. And then I also take at night some metformin, which is probably the most radical thing that I take, which is a prescribable drug for diabetes.
Metformin?
Met.
M-E-T? And prescribable drug. But you don't have diabetes?
I do not.
But you take it for?
For preventing cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and aging.
Can you spell it? M-E-T?
Formin. And so out of studies of 10,000 people and more, it's been shown that people who take metformin, even if they have diabetes, are protected against other diseases of aging, even frailty. And so most scientists, if you ask them in my field, will say, yeah, metformin is likely to extend your lifespan. It's just that the FDA doesn't let you have it for aging because aging isn't a disease yet.
So do you have to get diabetes to get it, or do you have to get a sneaky doctor?
Well, I wouldn't call it a sneaky doctor, but the doctor typically has to be convinced because they don't keep up with the literature. And
Right.
it's off-label.
Okay.
Right.
And how much do you take of that?
I take a gram of that as well, which is about a low dose. Some diabetics take 2 grams, so it's not crazy amounts.
Is there any side effects?
Well, the good news is that it's extremely rare that you get sick from any of these molecules. In millions of patients around the world, nobody's getting sick. The worst you'll have, as far as I can tell, is a stomach upset. And I get that, which is actually helpful. If I'm hungry, I lose my appetite. But I think the downside is extremely low, and the upside is anything's better than what's coming.
And what is the mechanism that metformin is operating under?
Okay. So this is the great thing, is that over the last 20 years, we scientists have figured out that there are universal regulators of aging, from yeast to worms to mice and in humans. And there are 3 main pathways that we figured out respond to what we eat and how we exercise. And one of them is called AMPK, and this is a target of metformin. And so when I take metformin, I'm activating my AMPK, which will send out the troops. The sirtuins I've mentioned, that's the second of the pathways. And so I take NMN and resveratrol for that. And then the third one is called mTOR, which is a pathway in the body that responds to how many amino acids, how much meat you're eating. And it will also protect the body if you tweak it just the right way. And there's only, besides eating low amounts of protein, the only way to affect that pathway is with a drug called rapamycin, which is a little dangerous to try and is used for immunosuppressants. So it's not something that I would recommend, and I don't take it.